You don't hear any.
It's going to get you into trouble one day.
Thank you for visiting the Caption Media channel. I'm very pleased to have you here. Today I'm going to talk about the just released film Cobweb. I'll just give you the review to avoid spoiling any surprises in the film. So let's get started. First of all, some box office statistics. At the box office, gross USA, the film has made $440,000. Cobweb, a visceral horror directed by Samuel Bodin and written by Chris Thomas Devlin, may not be very innovative or creative, but that does not mean that their incredibly self-assured production does not succeed in entertaining. Things get off to an odd beginning. The grim atmosphere that the director creates initially seems out of place. Something makes it all seem too dark. It almost seems as if the tale is slow to pick up. The tone adds another dimension as Cobweb discloses more information, and the slow build then tends to work well. Soon it becomes obvious that some genuinely terrible things are occurring. So when the film Cobweb is released this summer, there are other things besides strange noises in the dark that will keep you up at night. When the script for this film, written by Texas Chainsaw Massacre's Chris Thomas Devlin, was included on the 2018 blacklist, Lionsgate first bought the rights to the film. Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr were cast for the project, however filming then didn't begin until September 2020. All of this has culminated in the movie's formal release this year. It is interesting how Cobweb manages to subvert genre expectations while being too brief to fully please. Just a little more excitement and perhaps gore is required to complete a crazy third act. The psychological thriller Cobweb centres on a normal childhood anxiety. However, in my opinion, Cobweb features uninspired directorial blinking instant soundtracks and generally murky cinematography. Before their history is revealed in a kind of sillier than usual conclusion that generates far more issues than it eventually answers, the parents of the movie behave inexplicably in every scene. The movie begins like any other cliched horror movie that you've watched before, but gradually it develops into a haunting and unsettling movie with a startling conclusion. It's an odd movie that emphasises how much family pain can plague a person. Cobweb is a terrifying fable that might become a Halloween classic. It draws us in with well-known knowledge before flipping the script with a startling climax. However, this film is generally unsatisfying, and it only manages one or two generally creepy or really horrifying, scary horror moments. Ultimately, it relies too much on ideas and visuals from other chilling films, and it comes to an abrupt close. The question is whether Cobweb's one plus point, strong performances and a menacing atmospheric tone, will be sufficient to save the film. Bodin makes an effort to evoke dread by using long views of the few recognisable set pieces in the movie, but he doesn't do anything to make those images seem potent or menacing. In this horror exercise that examines well-known themes of youthful innocence and paranoia, a disturbing notion fails to produce many genuine frights. It appears like the filmmaker worked very hard to make this movie a subtle creeper, but that's about it. All the atmosphere and little of the actual content could be enjoyed, but it still falls short of portraying or demonstrating any real excellence. The film's abrupt climax just emphasises the ambiguous conclusion, which is a bit of a letdown. The eerie atmosphere and general tone of Cobweb will, however, probably be plenty for horror lovers to feel content with their time. Strong performances by Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr, however, are insufficient to redeem the Stephen King-inspired Cobweb. Beyond a doubt, Cobweb has commendable atmospheric qualities, but as more and more peaks are added, they become more and more improbable. The trip is surprisingly fascinating at times, but ultimately the fragile structure can no longer support the logical errors. Cobweb is not really that innovative for a genre picture with limited ambition, but it's not all horrible. The story's inevitable conclusion is made without ever losing its unsettling tone, which is Cobweb's greatest success in ambiguity. Among all these contemporary horror films about children and the paranormal forces that stalk them, Cobweb may have a hard time sticking out, but certain deviations and flourishes offer it greater uniqueness. It's occasionally frightful and mildly interesting, but it's frequently underdone, aimless and lazy. Also, a superb performance by Woody Norman overcomes the dull material. I must acknowledge that Samuel Bodin's skill as a director works well with Chris Thomas Devlin's story, engrossing viewers in a sinister and disturbing thriller. Although there's some amusing suggestions for nightmare images, the writing obviously struggles to make a feature-length experience out of short film material. Even if it has several shortcomings, this movie is a twisted story about things that go bump in the night, and it's full of spooky style. Cobweb is at its best when it concentrates on the family drama, but it starts to veer off course when it turns into a full-on horror film. The hurried conclusion makes an effort to tie everything together, but falls short of the emotional punch that it seems the creators aimed for. Chris Thomas Devlin's writing offers enough morbidly humorous elements, although being derivative, to make the terrifying events seem current and urgent. You will start to wonder if it's a mortal or a supernatural being, a monster or a person. Cobweb leaves the solutions to those questions unsatisfactorily ambiguous. Ultimately, Cobweb, you could concede, might work better as a short story or as a component of an anthology series. Starr and Kaplan eventually take a back seat, making the final 30 minutes of the film seem very long-winded. There comes a point where the film's ambiguity begins to feel both half-baked and a clear attempt to postpone the inevitable, as luring as it can be at times. Overall, this atmospheric first theatrical film from director Samuel Bodin deviates just enough from standard slasher cliches to make for an enjoyable but unremarkable scarefest. When Bodin goes further into the realm of fairy tales for a gateway horror effort that reads like a bedtime story, there are significant faults. However, Cobweb weaves a tangled web in the disconnection from reality. As I already mentioned, Chris Thomas Devlin wrote a compelling, well-written family story for the movie. Most people will be completely surprised by the first major twist, and there is some great foreshadowing. It is a powerful instance that demonstrates the existence of more scary entities than phantoms of the night. The first two acts, which focus on the family, are undeniably the strongest parts. When Cobweb turns into a straight-up horror film, things start to get off track. Although the explanation for the unusual noises is horrifying, it does not quite fit with the rest of the movie. The hurried conclusion, which tries to bring everything together, is where this is most obvious. What should have been a genuine gut strike that gets people talking instead falls short. Despite certain executional flaws, Devlin's script is chock full of spooky turns that will keep the viewers wondering right up to the very end. Although it may not be a particularly memorable horror movie, it is nevertheless enjoyable, which is sometimes enough to convince us to go to the movies. Cobweb's first half is a little slow to get going, but once it does, the rest of the movie is an exhilarating roller coaster ride to the finale. With their visceral stunner Cobweb, director Samuel Bodin and writer Chris Thomas Devlin may not have done anything especially innovative or unusual, but it does not mean their incredibly self-assured production does not succeed in entertaining. Overall, the screenplay and the tale don't feel completed or well constructed. Despite the fact that the film's directing is strong and features skillful shot framing and lingering imagery. However, this isn't sufficient to stop the movie from failing. Sometimes good attempts can fall short because other technical components of the movie are not carried out precisely. Unfortunately, Cobweb is not a perfectly balanced meal on a plate like a good movie should be. However, there are several features of this film which might tempt audience to see it in a theatre. Those expecting a movie based on logic will likely be turned off, yet if you're willing to be ensnared by the tale's delicious evil, you may be. Cobweb will undoubtedly scare and delight. I'll rate this movie a 6 out of 10 on the critic scale, and I hope you enjoy it. Please share your comments if you've seen this film and you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and be sure to click the bell icon to receive more updates. As I'm currently off, I'll see you again soon. Cheerio, take care.
You don't hear me.
It's okay. It was just a bad dream.
This is getting ridiculous.
Peter drew this?
Yes. Is he all right?
Mom?
The banging.
You have a beautiful imagination. It's going to get you into trouble one day.